So, getting into your core musculature. Now, as we kind of talked about already, we have the foundation of our core here, and I'll do this here and go. Basically, like I said, we have this iliacus, right? And we have the sartorius, and we have the rectus femoris, right? All these muscles that we've already kind of talked about, and the iliopsoas, right? That come down the anterior portion of the right. So we have all these muscles that change the pelvic tilt, and so they're definitely part of the core musculature, right? That changes the support of our core. And like I said, or like you could probably imply or assume here, right? For the psoas muscles, right? The iliopsoas. If one of these psoas is tighter than the other, you're going to see lateral flexion kind of happening there, right? Because it's going to be pulling kind of the pelvis down and forward and twisting this way. So you're going to have a jerk and twist to your body, right? If this psoas is tighter than this one. So that could be one of those things that could be affecting, like if you're squatting and you're seeing kind of this rotation in the hip and internal rotation of the knee and all that happening, which is, believe it or not, incredibly common. The iliopsoas can be one of the muscles that are part of that. They're basically what you should understand about asymmetrical shifting, whether it's vertical or horizontal, and it's usually both, is that it's usually, if you think about, if my adductors and all that musculature is tight on one side of my body, but it's not on the other, those are going to turn my knee inward, and my butt's going to shift out that way, right? So it's probably going to be some looseness in your glute major, probably some tightness in your glute minor, maybe a little bit in your glute medius. Your sartorius was going to be tight. Your rectus femoris should be a little bit tight there, I think. Your adductors are going to be tighter on this side. Your calf and your peroneal longus is going to be tighter on this side. So all these things are going to be affecting this, along with your iliopsoas here. That's going to be working together to pull you out in this direction. Conversely, on the other side, the external rotators are probably going to be overactive there. So you might have a pull up to an anterior pelvic tilt on this side and have a little bit of a pull to a posterior tilt on this side. And that can be a source of back pain. Any type of level or other types of instabilities in your pelvis is going to affect how your low back feels. So, a lot of times, again, I have people stretch their rectus femoris, I have them stretch their piriformis, I have them stretch their internal rotators and foam roll into that glute medius and minor there, and stretch the psoas there. And that's what's going to allow us to come back to a more neutral position. And a lot of times when people say, okay, I have back pain today, and I have them address those things, the back pain goes away, right? So that's kind of what we want to understand here a little bit, is that all this affects the spine. And so since the psoas actually attaches into the spine, it's actually part of the stabilization system of the spine. Now, going into this a little bit more, and I guess I should have drawn these a little bit better here. On the tips of each bone here, you are going to end up having the multifidus here. And I'm going to go ahead, I probably should be talking about this on the posterior side. It goes lateral to medial, right? So it's going to go all the way up, right? So that's your multifidus. These are pretty much your only major lateral flexors and stabilizers of the spine that do this kind of lateral flexion. We do have some of our, I believe, transverse abdominis and whatnot is going to be affecting that lateral flexion a little bit, but these are really, really tiny muscles. They're not going to be able to do a whole lot as far as like lifting heavy weights in a lateral movement. In fact, this lateral side-to-side movement is not a particularly anatomical thing to be doing. So when people are taking a dumbbell here and going like this, I'm like, that's silly. I do have people sometimes do it with a cable that's pulling out this direction, because I find that's a little bit more effective. But part of the reason why I bring this up, and again, I should have done that on the posterior side. Let's go ahead and talk about more of, let's say, your rectus abdominis, which is going to kind of attach down here in your pelvic floor, and it's going to come up and it's going to attach to your ribs here. And since we're already on kind of the subject of pelvic tilt, this is going to be one of your key players. Now, basically, the abdominals, whether it's going to be your abs, right, or your more buried layers of your abdominals and your obliques and all that, they're going to basically be attaching to fascia, which is, remember, the outer coating or tendinous tissue that surrounds a muscle, that are going to be right in here that your abs are kind of covering up and actually are a part of, right? And so basically, one of the things about the abdominals is we think about them as crunching, but what the abdominals do is that they bring basically your dick to your ribs, right? It can pull you into posterior pelvic tilt, and it's going to bring your ribs closer to that. So one of the things that if people are relying too much on their psoas and they're doing sit-ups and all that, and I want them to get more of the abdominals to work, I'll have them actually keep their pelvis a little bit off the ground so they can't engage their psoas, right? And then they find that their range of motion is limited because in order to get yourself all the way up, you have to put your butt on the ground. And it's that point where you can't flex your spine, you can't get any more into this position, that your psoas takes over and your abs don't get any more contracted. And what happens, because we're going all the way up, is we actually lose tension on the abdominals while our psoas is doing the work. And since the psoas are notoriously tight muscles, we don't necessarily want to be working them. Therefore, full sit-ups are bullshit. So basically, the abdominals just mostly pull this way. They might allow for a little bit of lateral flexion. They might have some asymmetricalness, but usually, generally speaking, your obliques are going to be doing that. So basically, your oblique muscles, and I guess I don't really need to go into them too much as far as like internal, external, and your transverse abdominis and all that too much. They're either going to attach into this fascia that is above and part of your abdominals, or they're going to attach in the ribs. I don't believe they might attach into the pelvis. Let me double check that really quick. Yes, the transverse abdominis does attach into the pelvis at parts. So, basically speaking, you're going to have lines that are created, right, by your transverse muscles, right, your oblique muscles. And so your oblique muscles, and I'm not really doing this particularly well, run in diagonals, right? So they can be coming from this area, right? And they can move diagonally and feed into the anterior portion here, right? So they're going to come into the posterior ribs, go out at a downward, outward angle, and then move diagonally, wrap around, and insert either into the anterior fascia or into the pelvis, right? And vice versa. So you can have crossing back that way. And that's what's going to allow us to do this. Now, if both directions, like this way, are going at the same time, right? That's going to cause lateral flexion of the spine versus transverse movement. And I guess I haven't really explained the difference of those, so let's go ahead and take a moment to talk about that. Our bodies move in arguably more, but three basic planes of motion here, right? So we have a sagittal plane. This means that anything that's happening this way, right, that's straight into this sagittal plane, which means just anything that moves front to back. The frontal plane is abduction, right? It's that stuff. The transverse plane is that, right? Internal, external rotation, and at the hips. So, what allows us to have that transverse movement is going to be these diagonals that are created by these oblique muscles. And have I forgotten anything? So let's go ahead and talk about that one, sure. If we come down here, we do have muscles that come here, right? And that's going to be going from your, that's your quadratus lumborum, and that's going to be on the posterior aspect of the pelvis. It could be on the anterior, I could be wrong, right? The textbook's not that clear on that, right? So it's going to come up and attach to the spine, and it allows for some lateral flexion of the spine. They include the diaphragm a little bit. I'm not going to talk about that because it really doesn't do much for movement. We talked about the multifidus, so we're going to talk about the erector spinae. And this is one of the muscles, so the erector spinae kind of go like this, right? So these are generally longer muscles that go straight up the spine. Now they can cause some rotation, but they're mostly responsible for moving into extension.